I covered my brother's car note for 8 months straight, picking up back-to-back shifts at the hotel front desk, until the carpet pattern behind the check-in counter felt like something I could draw from memory. I did it because my mother asked me to. I did it because my father sat quiet on the line while she asked. I did it because when you've spent your whole life being the responsible one, saying no feels like a language you were never taught. And then my brother walked into my lobby on a Saturday night with his girlfriend on his arm, looked at me in my hotel blazer, and introduced me to her as basically just the help here. That wasn't even close to the worst part. My name is Mira. I'm 31 years old. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Austin with a window that faces a parking garage and a plant I've kept alive for 3 years because I needed to prove to myself I could take care of something without it costing me everything. I grew up in a house in San Antonio where my parents poured themselves into 2 very different children. My brother Derek was the one with big energy, the kind of kid who convinced teachers and coaches and distant relatives that something great was always just around the corner for him. He had ideas. He had plans. He had a smile that made adults nod and say, "That one's going somewhere." My parents lit up around him, my mother especially. She called him her visionary. I was the other one. The steady one. The one who got good grades without anyone checking, who made her own lunch, who figured things out quietly and without announcement. My father called me his rock. At 10 years old, I thought that was a compliment. By 20, I understood it was a job description. Derek is 35 now. He's been in real estate for 4 years. What that means in practice: he attends networking events, has a logo on a business card, and has yet to close a single deal. He drives a Lexus, leased, and wears the kind of watch that's meant to signal success before success has actually arrived. 8 months ago, my mother called me during my lunch break. I was sitting in the hotel break room eating leftover pasta I'd brought from home, the kind of meal I make on Sundays when I've mapped out the week's expenses and know exactly how much I can spend on groceries. She led with honey, the way she always does when what comes next is going to cost me something. "Your brother is going through a transition," she said. "His cash flow is a little tight right now. His car note is due, and I just don't want him to get behind on his credit. Could you cover it this month?" I stared at the table. The fluorescent light above me buzzed once, twice. "His car note is $640 a month," I said. "Just this once," she said. "You have a steady income." My father said nothing, but I knew he was there. He was always there, breathing quietly in the background while my mother arranged things. I said yes. I always said yes. Not because I didn't feel the weight of it, but because I'd learned early that the weight was mine to carry whether I agreed to or not. Saying no just meant the same burden arrived with extra guilt packed inside. 1 month became 2. 2 became 8. And every month, there was a new reason. He had a deal in the works. He was waiting on a commission. One of his clients fell through. The market was unpredictable. My mother delivered these updates with the same gentle urgency she used when she was scheduling a dentist appointment. "Your brother needs a little more time." I stopped doing the math after month 5. Not because the number stopped mattering, but because the number had grown past the point where looking at it directly helped anything. $5,120 over 8 months. That's what I know now. At the time, I just transferred the money and didn't open my banking app for 3 days after. The Saturday Derek walked into my hotel was the first week of November. I remember because we just put up the holiday lobby display. A tall arrangement of silver branches with white lights. And the whole front area smelled faintly of cinnamon from the diffuser the events coordinator had plugged in near the entrance. I was behind the check-in counter when I heard him before I saw him. His laugh, low and rolling, the kind that fills whatever room it enters. He came through the revolving door with his girlfriend, and 2 people I didn't recognize. She was in a white coat and tall boots. He was wearing the watch. They were talking and laughing like people who have never once worried about a car payment. I stayed very still. He spotted me on the way to the bar and changed course. "There she is," he said to his girlfriend, steering her toward the desk. "This is my little sister. She works here." He said it the way you'd say she collects coupons. The way you'd say it to fill space, rather than to introduce a person. His girlfriend smiled. Oh, that's sweet. Derek leaned an elbow on the counter and lowered his voice just enough to sound casual but loud enough for the couple checking out beside me to hear. You've been here, what, 3 years now? You ever think about doing something more with yourself? I looked at him. He had my mother's eyes and my father's casual certainty, and for a moment, I couldn't say anything at all. His girlfriend touched his arm. Babe. He grinned. I'm just saying, she's smart. She could be managing this place. I turned to the couple checking out. Did you need anything else for your stay? They shook their heads and moved quickly toward the elevator. People always know when they've walked into something they don't want to be part of. Derek and his group drifted toward the bar. I stood at the desk with my hands flat on the counter and counted my own breathing. My colleague Nina was at the other terminal. She didn't say anything for a full minute. Then she slid a bottle of water across the counter without looking at me and said, Don't let him flatten you in your own space. I took the water. I didn't cry. I have a rule about that. Not at work, not in front of people who might use it later. But something in my chest had gone very quiet, like a clock that stopped ticking without warning. I finished my shift. I drove home at midnight with the heat on low and the radio off. I walked into my apartment, changed into pajamas, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the floor. What do you do when someone who owes you, genuinely owes you, in a way you could print on paper and number, still manages to make you feel small? What do you do when the insult comes from the mouth of the person your own money has been keeping afloat? I didn't sleep well, but I didn't spiral. Something had cracked, the way ice does before it gives, quiet but definitive. 2 weeks later, Nina texted me while I was folding laundry. She had a careful way of messaging. She'd start with your name, which meant she was about to say something she'd thought about more than once. Mira, hey, weird question. Did you give your brother a camera? I set down the shirt I was holding. I had. A Canon DSLR I'd bought used 6 years ago, the camera I'd used to teach myself photography on weekends and evenings when I had an hour that was actually mine. When Derek told me he was trying to build a portfolio of listing photos for his real estate business, couldn't afford a photographer yet, just getting started, I'd said yes without hesitating. I'd cleaned the lens, packed it in its case with both batteries charged, written a little note inside on a folded piece of paper. Good luck. I meant it completely. Why, I typed back. She sent me a link. eBay listing. My camera. Body only, good condition, $175 OBO. The listing had been posted 6 days ago. In one of the photos, I could see, faintly, a small scratch on the top left corner of the body. The one I'd gotten the summer I dropped it on a hiking trail, and had convinced myself wasn't worth worrying about. I sat down on the floor of my laundry room. It wasn't the money. $175 is not the reason my hands started to shake. It was the note. The one I'd written in the case. Good luck. He'd listed it 6 days after I gave it to him. He never needed the camera for listings. He needed the quick cash, and he used my good faith to get it. He didn't sell the camera. He sold the version of me that was still willing to believe in him. I didn't text him that night. I sat on the couch with the eBay page open on my phone and let myself feel the full weight of it. Not anger, clarity. That particular kind of clarity that only comes when you've finally seen something you cannot unsee. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A man's voice, professional, measured. He introduced himself as my brother's landlord and asked if I was the contact listed as backup guarantor on the lease. I said no. There was a pause. He said my name and number had been provided as an emergency contact. He said there was a balance owed. I told him I had never signed anything. I was not responsible for any balance, and he should please remove my information from his records. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex for a long time. My brother had given out my name. He had handed pieces of my identity to strangers like they were his to distribute. I thought about all the times he must have said my sister will handle it to someone, somewhere, in a room I was never in, as if I were a service he'd subscribed to on my behalf. I wrote him a message that afternoon, short. I do not authorize you to give my name, number, or any information about me to landlords, lenders, or anyone else. Do not contact me about money. I mean this. He replied within 4 minutes. Relax, I was going to tell you. It's not a big deal. I put my phone in my bag and didn't look at it for 6 hours. That Friday, I drove to my Aunt Rosa's house. She's my mother's older sister, the one who never moved away from San Antonio, who grows tomatoes, she insists on sharing whether you ask or not, and who says exactly what she thinks in a voice so calm it takes you a second to register what she's said. I brought wine. She had already made dinner, the way she always does when she suspects someone needs feeding. We sat at her kitchen table, and she poured 2 glasses and looked at me the way only people who've known you your whole life can. Like they can see the part you're trying to keep steady. How much has it been? She asked. Total. I told her. The car note, 8 months. The utility bill from September, the $200 I'd sent just to help with groceries. She set her glass down. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went very still. Your mother knows what she's doing, she said. I don't think she does it to hurt you. But she sees you as the one who can absorb it. She has since you were small. I nodded. My throat was tight. The problem with being capable, Rosa continued, is that people treat your capability like a resource they're entitled to. They don't ask if you're tired. They just keep withdrawing. No one had ever said it that plainly to me. I'd thought it before, in the middle of the night, in the language of half-formed feelings. But hearing it out loud, in a real room, with wine and tomatoes on the counter, felt like something being finally set down. My phone rang. My mother. Rosa raised an eyebrow. I picked up, because not picking up meant a follow-up call within 20 minutes. My mother's voice was cooler than usual. Rosa told me you'd been coming to her with family issues. I said we were having dinner. She said, whatever you're thinking about your brother, he's going through something real right now. I need you to extend some patience. Rosa held out her hand. I gave her the phone. She said, calmly, and without raising her voice, the girl has been carrying your son for the better part of a year. If you want to talk about patience, start with the patience she's shown all of you. Then she ended the call and handed the phone back to me. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know, she said. That's why I did. We finished dinner. She sent me home with tomatoes. That night I opened a notebook I'd had since college and wrote 3 things I would no longer do. I would not send money to or for my brother, regardless of who asked. I would not allow my contact information to be used without my explicit consent. I would not explain my decisions to people who had already decided I was wrong. I went to sleep feeling something I didn't have a name for. Not peace exactly. More like the moment after you've set something very heavy down. Your arms still remember the shape of the weight, but your hands are empty. It lasted 11 days. On a Tuesday morning, I woke up to a text from Derek. No punctuation, no capitals. Just need somewhere to stay for a few days, got a lot going on, please don't make this hard. I read it 3 times. The lowercase, the trailing, please don't make this hard. It was not an accident. It was designed to make refusal feel like cruelty. I didn't respond. I got up, made coffee, went to work. That evening, he called twice. I let it go to voicemail. The first message was low and tired. Mira, come on. I'm not asking for much. The second was my mother's voice. He called me. He doesn't have anywhere to go. I don't understand why you're making this so difficult. This is your brother. I sat on my couch and listened to both back to back. Then I opened my notes app and typed 1 line. People who love you don't use your empathy as a lever. I don't know why I typed it. I wasn't going to show it to anyone. I just needed to say it somewhere outside my own head to make sure it was true. 3 days later, just before 9 in the evening, I heard knocking at my door. 3 knocks, then 2 more, fast. I recognized the rhythm before I even got up. I looked through the peephole. My brother was in the hallway with a duffel bag over one shoulder. His expression was arranged into something that was supposed to look defeated, but had too much control behind it. I slid the chain across and opened the door a few inches. He looked at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Just a few days, he said. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I just need somewhere to land. I kept my voice level. You have a lease. He said he was behind on rent. He said things had gotten complicated. He said complicated 3 times in 4 sentences. I looked at him. I thought about $5,000. I thought about a camera with a scratch on the corner and a note tucked in the case that said good luck. I said, I can't do this anymore, Derek. He said, you can, you just don't want to. And that right there, was the truest thing he'd said to me in years. He was right. I could. I was choosing not to. And I was realizing, slowly and completely, that choosing not to was something I was allowed to do. I said, I hope you figure it out. Then I closed the door. He knocked again. He said my name twice. He said something that was probably designed to wound me about being cold, about how I'd regret this. I sat on my couch and listened and didn't move toward the door. After a few minutes, it was quiet. I texted both my parents that night. I love you. I am not able to be Derek's financial support anymore. I'm not angry, but I need you to hear this as a decision, not a discussion. My mother called immediately. I let it ring. My father left a voicemail 2 hours later, his voice slow and deliberate. Mira, I know things have been hard. But family is family. We raised you to take care of each other. I saved the voicemail. Not to replay it, just to have the words somewhere real, so I couldn't later convince myself I'd imagined the framing. As though I hadn't been taking care of my brother for 8 months. As though care was only supposed to move in one direction. What I didn't expect was the text Nina sent the following Monday. She'd been giving me space in the way she did, not absence, but a careful kind of consideration. Her text was short. Did you know he posted something? She sent a screenshot. A community Facebook group. A vague, unattributed post about family estrangement, about being cut off while struggling, about doing it alone. The writing was precise in its vagueness. No names. Just enough detail that people who knew us would know. 41 sympathetic comments. Praying for you. Family can be so cruel. You deserve better. I stared at the screen for a long time. Nina called instead of texting. I picked up. Don't engage, she said before I could speak. He wants a reaction. He wants people asking questions. If you respond, you're in his story. I know, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, anyone who actually knows you already knows. You don't have to defend yourself to people who don't. I held on to that. I did post something, not a response to him, nothing referencing him at all. I wrote, if you've ever been told that protecting yourself makes you selfish, I see you. Taking care of yourself is not the same as abandoning someone. Those are not the same thing. Aunt Rosa commented within 2 minutes, this. A woman I'd worked with 3 years ago, barely a friend, sent me a message. Needed to see this today. Thank you. It wasn't vindication, but it was a reminder that my story, said plainly, had weight. My mother didn't call for 5 days after that. When she finally did, her voice had a different quality. Not warm exactly, but careful. She said she'd been thinking. She said she knew things had been uneven. She didn't apologize, not directly, but she said she hoped I was taking care of myself. It was the closest thing to acknowledgement I'd gotten from her in years. I am actually, I said. There was a long pause. Your brother is going to be okay, she said. I know, I said, he usually is. She laughed, a small, surprised sound, like she'd forgotten I could be dry about things. We didn't fix anything in that conversation. But we'd said true things to each other, and that was more than we usually managed. The week after, I did something I'd been talking myself out of for 2 years. I signed up for a photography class at the Art Center downtown. Wednesday evenings, 6 weeks, beginner's welcome. I'd looked at the course listing so many times the website had started suggesting it to me automatically. I'd told myself, the timing was wrong, I was too tired, I didn't have the right equipment anymore. That last part made me laugh, quietly in my car. I bought a used camera body at a shop near my apartment. Different brand than my old one, but better sensor, and the lenses were interchangeable. The guy behind the counter told me I'd made a good choice. On the walk home, I thought about the eBay listing. $175. The cost of 8 months of believing in someone who was already calculating the resale value. I put the camera in my bag and walked home in the early evening light. That particular October light Austin gets. amber and low, the kind that makes even sidewalks look worth photographing. I stopped on the block in front of my building and took a picture of a shadow falling across a parking meter. It was a small picture. It didn't mean anything to anyone else. But I took it because I wanted to, and that was the only reason I needed. I've been doing that more lately, taking pictures of things because I want to, making meals I actually want to eat without calculating whether the money could go towards someone else's problem, working the shifts that work for me instead of only the extra ones, saying the word no in small, ordinary situations just to practice the way it feels. Derek hasn't reached out in 3 weeks. My mother calls on Sundays now. Shorter conversations, more careful ones. My father texted last week to say he'd eaten leftover chili I'd brought the last time I visited, and that it was good. It felt like an olive branch that didn't ask for anything in return, and I accepted it. I don't know what happens next with any of them. I don't know if my brother finds his footing or keeps falling and finds other people willing to break themselves catching him. I don't know if my parents ever fully understand what these last years cost me. Maybe they don't need to. Maybe understanding isn't the thing I was waiting for anyway. What I know is this. I got home from my second photography class last Wednesday, poured myself a glass of water, sat at my kitchen table, and went through the photos I'd taken that evening. A fire escape, a leaf pressed flat against a chain-link fence, a woman walking her dog, blurred at the edges, moving too fast for the shutter speed I'd set. Not one of them was taken for anyone else. I opened my laptop and set one as my desktop background. Then I ate dinner in the quiet of my own apartment, in the life that is entirely and only mine, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, that was more than enough.